Hi, everyone. It is Jamie Jo Wright back in the studio again, which I never really leave because it's also my office, but whatever. Anyway, I have with me today Mesu Andrews. Hello. I love having you on. We always have so much fun when we chat.
I know. I love to chat with you.
It's just fun. Well, and hopefully everybody else likes to come along and eavesdrop. So I always say that the podcast is kind of like two pals meeting up in a coffee shop, and the listeners are at the next table just leaning over going, what are they talking about? I should change the name of the podcast to like eavesdropping.
Oh, MadLit is pretty stinking good, though. I like it. Come on. Eavesdropping's good too, though.
Yeah. Well, you guys can all be the MadLit eavesdroppers. We'll just call you that. That's your club name. Oh, man. But you have a book coming out.
I do. And I love this cover.
Look at that. It's beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous?
It is beautiful. Yes. Ooh, I didn't notice that. You're right.
Isn't that fun? Yes.
She's going all fierce. Ooh, I like that.
David needed a fierce one to run the wilderness with, so there you go.
He did. So this book is called Brave.
Yes.
It is the first in King David's Brides.
Yes.
And it's the story of, I'm going to not pronounce it right, but a Hinnoim?
That's the way I say it.
A Hinnoim?
I don't know. Yeah.
We should ask her someday when we get to heaven.
We'll ask.
So did we actually like massacre your name on that podcast that one time, or is it really a Hinnoim?
Then I can commiserate because, with a name like Mesu.
Right.
You
can
call me anything but Moosey. Please don't get the U and the E mixed up. That's bad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I introduced that way one time, and I have to correct that. Yeah.
We're just gonna move on because I have no comment.
I have no comment on that.
I think any comment might be dangerous. Although, see, this is where I stick my foot in my mouth, but I'm going to do it because I've done it so many times now. I'm just used to it. We were on vacation in Wyoming, and my kids wanted to see one moose. Just one.
Okay.
And over the course of 3 days, and we found out this is very unusual, they took hashtags and counted 51 different moose.
Wait, are they called meese? Or
they're not. They're called moose. There's no plural. Well, there's plural. It's moose or moose.
51.
51.
That's a lot.
And I know.
Dangerous. Are they not?
They are. We actually saw a moose charge a fisherman. It was actually quite scary. It's a whole other long story. But the short version is my daughter and I were on a ridge, and I was yelling and screaming, and your voice gets lost out in the wilderness. It doesn't matter. And this fisherman had no idea. He couldn't see the moose because the grasses were so tall, but we could. And the moose was stomping the ground, and he had these big,
they're huge.
I don't know if they call them antlers or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
But anyway, he got charged, but he escaped with his life. It was scary, though. It was. I told my daughter afterwards, I was like, the thought went through my mind, like, is this really going to be my daughter's first witness of, of mortality? Like,
yeah.
That'll give you some nightmares later on. But anyway,
I
won't introduce you as Moosey.
Thank you.
It's Mesu. For those of you wondering, it's Mesu Andrews.
Mesu. Yeah. I really do answer to just about anything, but I just can't to Moosey. I'm sorry.
No.
I will correct. But a Hinnoim that's fine.
Yes.
She can correct us, when we're face to face.
I wonder if they did nicknames back then.
And here's another disclaimer. I give nicknames in my books.
Okay.
Because now some people get really cranky with me about that, and they say, it's kind of irreverent, but I mean, come on, who in their jammies is going to sit across from the other person having a nice little warm cup of tea? And yes, they did drink tea and say a Hinnoim.
Nobody.
Or Zeruiah. No. Say Zeri, right?
Yeah.
Zeruiah. And they're going to, so I call her no.
Okay.
In the book.
Yeah.
Just to people who are just really familiar to her. Her dad and Zeruiah is the mother of David's cousin or David's nephews, Joab,
Oh, okay.
Abishai.
Hmm.
So that's where they come in. And
Okay.
mom comes with them on the wilderness, stuff, um,
Okay.
to be kind of Ahinoam's chaperone during this
Oh,
thing,
okay.
because she becomes a part of the misfit army.
Hmm.
So she had to have a chaperone. She couldn't be the only one.
Well, that makes sense.
400 people, right? So somebody had to
Right.
come up. Zeri and Nomi. Yes, we do
We
nicknames.
did. Okay. Well, and I'm fine with that. I don't have a bone to pick with you on that. Because
Oh,
to me, it's human nature. I mean, people,
and it makes it a lot easier on the readers.
and the writer too. I mean, typing a
So
Hinoem
yeah, yeah,
800 times gets
yeah.
a little long.
It is. It's hard.
Okay, so educate me now. I will say when I was little
Yeah.
that David kind of ruined romance for me a little bit because I read this. I think the first one I was really familiar with was the story of him and it was Abigail, right? Where
Uh-huh.
there's this whole story of Abigail and him, which I won't go into. Um, as a little girl, I'm like, oh, it's the most romantic story ever. And
Wonderful.
then the next thing you read, he's married to somebody else, and then somebody else, and I'm like, how does that even work? So, who's Ahinoam now in relation to David and his love life?
So I know, right? And I have to say, this is the hardest part of writing this series. I mean, I've got 6 women that are
Oh
listed
my
in 2
gosh!
Samuel 3, verses 2 through 5, who are his wives in
Yeah.
Hebron. That's the first 7 years that he rules as king in this town, Hebron. And so it's before he goes to Jerusalem,
Okay.
before
Okay.
he conquers Jerusalem. And but there's 7 years even before that he's running around the wilderness, and then another year plus that he's in Ziklag in Philistine
Yep.
territory. And
Mm-hmm.
then he goes to Hebron finally and has 7 more years there in Hebron. And none of his sons are born before he gets to Hebron.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scripture is very clear that he marries Abigail
Mm-hmm.
before he leaves the wilderness. Okay.
Right. Right.
And tucked into the bottom of Abigail's story, it says, and he had married Ahinoam. That's in the bottom of Abigail's story. So Ahinoam was first wife, then came Abigail. But nobody knows anything about Ahinoam.
I was gonna say I don't think I've. I'm
No,
sorry. I keep looking at her picture over here on this my other monitor, and she's just staring at me, and I'm like, I'm
no,
sorry. I'm sorry.
sorry for you. And I was so sorry for her too. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to make her story wonderful and romantic, and that David adores her and she adores David, and then bring Abigail in? Because
Right.
he rescued Abigail and it was a great thing and everybody loves Abigail. And so how are they going to love Abigail but still love Ahinoam and not hate David? I
I
mean,
know.
seriously, I've got 3 more books to write and we can't hate David throughout 3 more books. So come on. So
Oh, Misu. What a challenge.
yeah. So
Now, also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no.
I was thinking too, with wives, wasn't he married to, didn't Saul give him a bride too? Like, was that before Ahinoam?
Yes, it was. It was like before Saul sent assassins after him. Actually,
Right.
he tried to kill him, and then Jonathan brought them together and said,
Right.
"Look, Dad, could you stop trying to kill
Just
my
be
best
nice.
friend? Just be nice."
Hashtag show kindness.
There you go. It was one of those, definitely.
Yeah.
And so Saul's like, "Okay, fine." And then they had a season of war, and then those young maidens that keep singing, Saul has
Mm-hmm.
slain his thousands.
Mm-hmm.
They are not doing David any favors there. No,
No.
not at all.
No.
So when winter came and they stayed in Gibeah, that's when things went south again
Okay.
for David. And Saul sent more assassins. That's when Michal let David down from the window, right?
Right. Right.
Here's a thing that I had not thought of. Michal, when she the assassins brought her before her father and said
Right.
she helped him down the window. She says she's terrified, right?
Right.
What her crazy dad's going to do to her because she
Right.
helped David out. So she says, he said he'd kill me.
Right.
I didn't help him, right?
Right.
When she said that, she put a target on David's back for treason. Because if you accuse someone of,
True.
she could have said something else. She could have not
Right.
put a target on her husband's back.
Right.
But because
Okay, so I don't have as much empathy for her.
I don't need that.
All right, let's throw her over.
So she's gone.
We've moved on. Their relationship's kind of like down the tubes.
Don't have for her. I don't. But okay, so she's gone.
Okay.
And once she's gone, then Ahinoam comes in, and she does not ever want to be married. We've got that going on. You'll find out in the book why she doesn't and all of that.
Okay.
And then David, I mean, he's been betrayed by his first wife. He's not all that thrilled with it either.
No.
But here's the thing about David, and here's why I think his multiple wives work. Couple reasons. First of all, I think he is a foreshadowing of grace in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
He breaks the law when he goes to the tabernacle and asks the high priest, "Can I have the showbread?"
Right.
He takes the showbread. He lies to the priest. Now, I happen to think it was because he wanted to give the priest plausible deniability.
Okay.
So when Saul sent people to question,
Right.
say he was here to get stuff for a secret mission you were put, I mean, I think that's why Saul didn't do that. Saul called them to his palace in Gibeah and killed them all. So that didn't work out so well. But David took the showbread, and he knew that was against the law. And what did God do about it? He still let him be king. He didn't take the throne away from David like he saw.
Right.
Grace. Now, David would have known Deuteronomy 17:17, the king shall not take many wives because they will lead him away from the Lord. So he had to have known that law.
Right.
I mean, he was David. He was after God's own heart.
Right.
So why did he, again, he married Ahinoam, but what about Abigail? Why was he allowed
to
marry Abigail and 4 more besides in Hebron within 7 years? Oh my goodness. So point number 2, besides that he's a premonition or a foreshadowing of grace for Christ figure that comes in Jesus Testament, I think he also has a depth of emotion, and capability of emotion that outshines probably any other man on earth, before or since, that we see in the Psalms. Here's a couple of things. Not only a capability for emotion beyond any other man, but also a capability of humility beyond most human beings. You talk about hashtag this or that. I mean, he just took his entire journal, all of his journals, and threw them out on social media, right?
Right.
Every awful, terrible thought, every low moment in his life. I mean, he just shared them with everybody to sing about while he's standing there singing with them about it. Seriously.
I don't really picture myself doing that on Sunday morning worship service. Just throwing that out there.
I've already told my children, you will burn my journals before you read them when I die. Do not a sentence, not one sentence. You will have a huge bonfire in my honor. And
now you know why I don't write a journal. I am petrified.
Right? So the fact that he is that humble to be able to share that openly and basically rip open his heart and show people what's in it, that tells me there's a humility about him. It shows me, I mean, I see anytime I look at the Psalms, I see a depth in that guy's emotion that is
Yeah.
just beyond belief to me.
Yeah.
And so I can believe, and I do believe, that David, a man after God's heart, was capable of loving each of these women. I believe that. But I also believe he loved them differently
Hmm.
because they were each different women.
Right.
And so what I have to do in each of these books is to show how very different they were.
Okay.
And because of the culture in
Hmm.
which they lived, a woman without a man could not survive. If
Right.
she did, she was on the street
Right.
and she had to become a harlot. So
Right.
it was either marriage or harlotry. So
Okay.
that's
Well,
it. That's all she
and
got.
it's the king, so might go there too. That's fine.
Yeah. So there you go. And
All
so
right.
my job is not just to show that he can love them, but
Hmm.
show some sort of need in each of these women, that David is the hero, that he
Right.
has to rescue each and every one of these women because of some circumstance they're in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's the only one that can.
Yeah.
So that's the trick.
Okay. Well, you're tricky. So how many brides books are you writing? So you're
4.
writing 4 of them. Okay.
So Ahinoam and Abigail are in this one, and it's called Brave. Ahinoam, well, both of them actually are going to have to learn the lesson to make that change in themselves, that
Hmm.
brave is more than just fighting with daggers or,
Yeah.
withstanding a bad husband
Right. Right.
like Abigail had done her whole 10 years of marriage.
Right.
It's about being brave enough to risk your heart,
Mm-hmm.
being brave enough to risk your heart to love a man who is going to love other women.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
Well, then,
yeah,
I will say this though, and maybe I'm completely off base because I'm not a writer of biblical fiction and I'm not a scholar either. But culturally, multiple spouses was not nearly as rare as I think we're accustomed today, especially in Western culture. So there's probably an element of it. It might be against God's commands, but it wasn't necessarily against cultural norm, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, even Saul had a concubine. He only had one wife. And
Okay.
by the way, her name was Ahinoam.
Oh, for real?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
heavens.
In scripture. And this is really creepy. So Saul is probably like in his 70s when he's like chasing David all over
Right, right,
the wilderness, early 70s. But he, so his wife would have been Jonathan's mom, Michal's mom.
mm-hmm,
Ew. So now, so some of the scholars are saying, oh, yeah, David married Saul's wife to get back at him. And I'm thinking, how could Ahinoam, David's first child in Hebron, I think it's anatomically not going to happen unless
right,
it's a Sarah thing. And if it's a Sarah kind of thing, why wouldn't her story be in scripture? So
yeah,
I kind of nix that. I don't, no can do on that. Sorry. So, but it is interesting that Saul's wife's name is Ahinoam.
that is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is interesting.
Mhm.
So what do we know about this Ahinoam, David's wife? What do we know? And then what did you have to go? There's a lot of blanks here.
Yeah, a lot of blanks.
Yeah,
So, what we do know, scripture mentions her 6 times,
okay,
and every single time they use the full description, Ahinoam of Jezreel.
okay.
Ahinoam of Jezreel 6 times. And when I first wrote this as a short story back in 2021.
Oh, okay.
And when I was doing Patreon and was
Mm-hmm.
pumping out, short stories every month, and about nearly killed myself. When I did it as a short story, I didn't have time to do a lot of research.
Okay.
And I thought, Jezreel, oh, must be the valley, Jezreel Valley, which is up
Right.
more and closer to where Saul's home
Mm-hmm.
place was in
Mm-hmm.
Judea, up near Jerusalem. But then when I started doing more research for this novel, I found out that in Judah's hill country, which is south and
Mm-hmm.
desert territory, in that hill country, which is lots of rocks and hills and cliffs and valleys, there's this teeny tiny little town called Jezreel, and it's listed in Joshua. When
Okay.
Joshua is divvying out land
Okay. Yep.
and tribes. So to Judah's tribe, a portion of Judah's tribe
Mm-hmm.
gives this little town with several others to this hill country area in the tribe of Judah.
Okay.
And it's mentioned with several other cities that are in that area, Carmel,
Mm-hmm.
which Abigail and
Yep.
Nabal are there,
Mm-hmm.
on which is also where the sheep shearing happens.
Okay. Yep.
So we've got lots of story connections. Ziph,
Right.
which is the Ziphites were ones who betrayed David and told Saul where to find him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all in that same little area of these hill country towns.
Okay.
So that's where Ahinoam was from.
Yeah.
It repeats it 6 times so that we get it, so that
Okay.
we know
Yeah.
she's in familiar territory when she was in that wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that tells me that she was comfortable in that kind of climate, in
Yeah.
that kind of territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so little things like that are important. When I search Jezreel, those
Right.
things come up. Yeah.
Yeah. They they kind of change perspective a little bit, and it influences the story too, because they're two very, very different places.
Right. Very, very
Same
different.
name,
Yeah.
different places,
Very
and
different.
that impacts things greatly.
Yeah, it does. And it's funny because I just stumble into things a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good confirmation that the Lord's in it,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not that smart. And so for he really has to, like, help me along a little
Sure.
bit, because I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
And so in that short story that I wrote, I just
Mm-hmm.
thought it'd be cool if Ahinoam was, a Kenite, because I
Okay.
remembered that Jael, who is an Old Testament
Mm-hmm.
person,
Right.
she was a Kenite, and she helped Israel back in the time of the judge,
Right.
and she poked a tent peg through
Oh yeah.
Canaanite general's temple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, yeah, we got good stock in the Kenite,
Right.
so let's
Right.
get Ahinoam a Kenite. That was my whole thinking in
Okay.
deciding she was a Kenite. But as I got to doing more research on the Kenites, as I got to doing more thinking about who her father was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
I found out that Kenite actually means blacksmith.
Okay.
Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
Then I found out that Kenites, so I realized that
Mm-hmm.
Samuel went to Saul and said, "The Lord is telling you, you need to attack the Amalekites and wipe them off the face of the earth."
Mm-hmm.
So what does Saul do? He goes to the Amalekite city, and the Kenites are camped in front of the Amalekite city.
Mm-hmm.
So Saul says to the Kenites, "Y'all need to get out of the way, because I'm about to attack the Amalekites. And you have been helpful to Israel in our history.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm warning you, you need to get out of here." So the Kenites leave, and they're safe.
Okay.
And then he attacks Amalekites, and he doesn't kill them completely. And that
Right.
causes him to lose his throne.
Right.
And so yada, yada, yada. Okay. Kenites have been helpful to Israel throughout history. So I have a Kenite blacksmith living in a Judean hill country town.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah.
Didn't know any of that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I did. So
Right.
I just wrote it down.
Don't you wish you could just hop into a time traveling machine?
Yes, every day,
Mm-hmm.
every day.
There's I help out with children's church and at our church, and there's a show which some people probably are familiar with, but it's called Superbook.
Oh yeah,
Okay. And it's a cartoon and it's really
yeah.
silly, but they travel back to all these biblical stories, and I'm like, and why isn't this real? Why isn't there really a Superbook? Because I want one.
I want one. Me too. And I want to be able to dial it in to
Right.
exactly what time
Yeah.
go to.
Uh-huh.
They don't get to do that in Superbook, and I think that's kind of a
Right.
in the system, if you ask me. But
Yeah. Could be.
I would really love that too.
I know, it would be so cool. And I remember growing up too, I would watch not watch because, I mean, I was old. I'm not that old. We did have things to watch, but it was the radio. It was Adventures in Odyssey, right? The radio, and they would do these episodes. They were my favorite episodes because Wits End he had the imagination station,
Oh yeah.
which worked just like a time machine. And they would go back to different. And there were some episodes where they would go back to the biblical times, and I was just like, please,
So
somebody build one of these now.
cool. I know.
Because you read stuff like this and you don't understand all those little nuances. And then when you get deeply into the story,
Yeah.
you start understanding the nuances that are so easily missed when you're just skimming through scripture.
And that's what I love. So when I don't have a lot on a character,
Mm-hmm.
I really try hard to connect that character with something previously in scripture or coming
Sure.
up very soon, or
Mm-hmm.
so that it's more than just her story in
Yeah.
fiction, but it brings the previous history to bear
Mm-hmm.
on their situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and stop me if I've already told you my conversion story, but
Go for it.
so I, I'm a spiritual mutt,
Yeah.
mom's charismatic, dad was a Quaker, my grandparents, Pilgrim Holiness turned Wesleyan. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, scripture was just a verse here and a verse here used to duel over dinner kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
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 So I grew up not really wanting anything to do with God, thinking he was just, pretty much not cool. And I was
Yeah.
an alcoholic by the time I was 16.
Wow.
So I really wanted nothing to do with scripture. And there was a friend of mine from high school who had gone away to a Christian college, and he was not a believer either. And then his basketball scholarship dried up after the first year because this engineering school wanted to buy personal computers for everybody. I know
Okay.
it was a passing fad, I'm sure, but
Must have been. Yeah.
yeah. So he came back home, and he was very weird. Those Baptists had gotten a hold of him something.
Oh, those Baptists.
He wore a tie to a football game, and I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my.
what's wrong with you? And so, anyway, long story short, he said the Bible is one story
Mm-hmm.
from cover to cover.
Right.
And he said, it is actually a love letter written just for you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is in Genesis 3:15.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, you need to read more of the Bible because that's not it at all. He's in 3:16, and he's like,
Right. Yeah. Not Genesis.
I
Not
know
Genesis.
they didn't teach you much down there. And he's like, no, here, read this.
Mm-hmm.
Eve's seed will crush the serpent's head, but the serpent's going to strike his heel.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, that's the serpent striking his heel is the cross, and the crushing of the serpent's head, that's the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Jesus gets rid of death and sin. And
Yeah.
we're living in the already not yet time.
Right.
And he said, and I'm like, I still, little, well, by our, I don't know, 6th date or 10th date, he's leading me to Jesus because I see this crimson thread running
Yeah.
all through the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And so 6 months later, I married that guy.
Oh,
Yeah,
this just became a
I know, right? But that's why I write Old Testament,
Yeah.
because I want people to see how the
Mm-hmm.
stories just fit together. They
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
come into this wonderful crimson thread that just
Mm-hmm.
leads so beautifully to what happens in the New Testament.
Right.
And that's why it's so important for us to realize that, yeah, David did break the law. He
Right.
did. He did.
Mm-hmm.
God's grace says, when David asked God, I want I want to build your house. I want to
Mm-hmm.
build you a temple. And God said, no, 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 you don't get to do that. But I'm going to establish your house
Right.
instead. And God, was it a surprise to him that David was going to marry a bajillion women?
And
No.
set the stage for his son, who like quadrupled that. Let's not even talk about
700
Solomon.
wives and 314.
Right. I know.
Yeah, not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so no,
Yeah.
God was not surprised by that. And
No.
David needed a lot of grace.
Uh-huh.
He was,
Yeah.
yikes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all part of the story.
It is. It is. It's all part of the story. And the cool thing, when I was teaching Old Testament survey a while back to some of our freshmen and sophomore at our church, I said to them, I said, we can get hung up on David having X amount of wives, et cetera, et cetera. I said, or we can look at why did God name them?
Huh?
And why is it important for us to know that they existed?
Right.
Because each one of those women had very specific roles in the forthcoming story that was continuing to be told. I mean, you look at Abigail, you look at Bathsheba, you look at, I'm
Right.
sure, Ahinoam. Every single one of them is named for a reason. I said, there's no accident. God didn't just go, oh, you know what? Let me just throw in Abigail. I suppose I need
Right.
extra word count for this book, so we're going to tell her story. No, there's a reason that it's there.
And that's why I love telling the stories of the obscure women. I mean, Job's wife, seriously, everybody knows her as the one that says, curse God and die.
Curse God and die.
Seriously, she just lost 10 kids.
Oh, I know. I've always felt a little bad for her. Like, she kind of gets the bad rap for being I'm not allowed to use the word, but, and I'm kind of like, hey, whatever affected Job was really affecting her too, because we all complain about it when our husband gets a cold. Wait till your husband has boils from head to toe.
Oh, yes. And my very first book, I just wanted to know her name.
Mm-hmm.
I started out thinking, well, I don't know, I could write a book about Job, but I really just want to know her name.
Yeah.
That book started out with just one question. And wow, it led me to lots and lots of very fun, interesting things about Job and his wife and that whole thing. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love history. And, a lot of people ask me, why do you like history so much? And this is why, because history affects today. It's today cannot be untouched by history. It's completely formed by it. And then you look at our spiritual history, and each one of these people are critical to the story that is told throughout scripture. So
exactly. I think I'm just maybe too self-centered to like history. I hate history. I got to tell you, I hate history.
That's so funny.
No, but I love biblical history. I love all these. Every time I turn over a rock, there's just like gold underneath.
Yeah.
And that's so that part I love, and research is my very favorite part. I mean, I have to pull myself kicking and screaming away from my research
to actually get the writing done. Yeah.
Because I just love it so much. It's so fun.
That's great. All right, so Brave is book 1 in King David's Brides, the story of Ahinoam.
And Abigail's included.
And Abigail is included. Awesome.
I know she's a secondary character in this, though, because her story's already in the Bible. Go read the Bible if you want to know.
Right, right. She's already been on a few book covers too.
I will say, though, my free novella
Mm-hmm.
that is, it's going to be a giveaway leading up to Abigail.
That's okay.
And I tell you I tell you what happens after she meets David and that time between he dies and they come to ask her to marry David. So you get a little glimpse into what the Bible doesn't tell you, because that's kind of my style. And then
reading between the lines. What's that?
The second book. Do you want to know what
Yes, I was just going to say, can you tell us anything more about the second book?
I can't.
Okay.
The title is going to be Noble.
Ooh.
The story of Maacah.
Who?
I know. See, there you go. Maacah, and she is the third wife listed.
Okay.
She's Absalom's mama.
Oh, ooh.
I know, right? But as a little boy, I'm sure he was adorable. And so she's got this big hair. Right?
I was just going to say, does she have a lot of hair?
Absolutely.
He had to get it from someone.
Big hair. Yeah, absolutely. And so that one is called Noble because she's the daughter of a king.
Right.
She is the only royal Gentile that David marries.
I knew that Absalom's mother was essentially a princess, I guess you could call it. But, I did not realize she was the only one, and I did not know her name.
Yes, that's who that is.
All right.
So I'm only doing the years in Hebron.
Okay.
I'm not doing any. So I'm not writing about Bathsheba, and I'm not writing about Michal even though she comes to David again in Hebron. She may show up a little bit, but we're not focusing on her.
Yeah.
Okay, so book number 3 is called Loyal.
Okay.
And that one is about Haggith. Oh, bless her soul for that.
It reminds me of haggis, like the Scottish haggis, like here, have some sheep's stomach, but that's not what it is, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I think. No. What kind of name? Haggy? I mean, no. I
that
can't.
Doesn't hag? Oh, that's even worse.
Worse. I don't think I can nickname her either. It's just, I don't know.
Maybe they go a little like urban and they just call her H.
Oh, I like that better.
They could be like, yo, H.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that one. So book number 4 is going to have the 2 last wives.
Okay.
And that is Abital. And the name of it is Worthy. Love these one-word titles.
And they're kind of cool.
Publisher's idea.
Yeah, I like it.
So Worthy, and that is the story of Abital.
Okay.
And it's going to include the last wife, Iglah.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'm saying any of those names correctly, but that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, how frequently are these getting released? Like, is this like we have to wait a year between each, or 10 months? Well, that's not bad.
It's better than the year. It's a little bit terrifying for me. We're trying to do it a little quicker because I have done some of the research on it. Before,
So, well, and that's good because readers don't like to wait.
We don't like to wait. I
don't.
get fussed at an awful lot for having people wait.
Mesu, it is such a blast to have you here. And I'm excited. You've got Brave book 1 coming out. And then we only have to wait 10 months for the next one. And then 10 months for the next one. So we get to keep going. So. If readers want to find out about you, they can go to your website, mesuandrews.com. And it looks like you have everything there, plus a newsletter that people should sign up for, I'm assuming.
All right. That's where I share lots of stuff that nobody sees.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming. And then we'll have to have another one of these in 10 months.
I would love that.
Okay.
Always love it.